and for giving us this insightful information that you're about to give us. So I think that we can just go straight into it. So if you can just start off with a brief introduction of yourself and then going into work environment, how many calls, what are expected of the interns, those kinds of things.
Okay, so let's start with brief introduction. I'm Alcine. I'm a second-year intern working at Mahatma Gandhi and Pixley Hospital. Previously, it used to be a Gandhi Addington rotation, but all the rotations that are now done at Addington are now done at Pixley Hospital. The plan in the long term is for all the rotations to move to Pixley Hospital. So at some point in the future, I don't know whether it'll be you lot of guys or maybe the next lot of interns that come in, where they will just do their entire internship at Pixley Hospital with the exception of family medicine, which will be done at Gandhi Hospital. So in terms of expectations of interns, so that'll change as per each rotation that you go through. So I'm just going to go through each rotation and give you a brief idea of what each of them looks like. So the rotation I started off with is internal medicine. Expectations for interns are very, very low for internal medicine. You see all your patients with a senior. And usually, most of the time, your senior will just make notes, admit the patient, and all you really do is the ward work. So that's for your calls. And your patients will either come straight to the acute medical unit or you'll see them in the emergency department. In terms of calls, so you work either, if your group is large enough, some of you will be able to do short calls. So short calls is where you work the normal day, but you end a little bit later. You end at 10 p.m. at night. Depending on the night, if it's a quiet night, they might let you go a bit early. Especially because Pixley is in KwaMashu, it's a bit of a dangerous area. They don't really like to keep people on for too late. So they often let you go at 8 p.m. But the calls themselves, the normal calls, the long calls, start at 8 and then you are post-call the next day at 8 a.m. You may have to round up a few things and attend a quick handover round that should take you up till 9 o'clock and then you can go home. So it's quite reasonable. The calls themselves, they're usually not too busy. However, the wards will call you a fair bit. There's always going to be someone with high GMs, hypertensive problems. Those things happen. But overall, it's a good block. The seniors there are quite keen to teach, so you'll learn a lot. The consultants are quite keen to teach. It's a solid rotation. I know some people, they have really horrible internal medicine rotations because the workload is just a lot because they see just like the sheer bulk of patients. In Pixley, it's not terribly busy. If you do Pixley, if you end up at Pixley, you will enjoy your internal meditation for sure. You will. Next, ONG. So we did our ONG rotation at Mahatma Gandhi Hospital, which is eventually going to move to Pixley. ONG at Mahatma Gandhi Hospital is very, very, very busy. They can do like 5 or 6 Caesars in the night, but the beautiful thing is you do get a pre-call. So you start your call at 4 and then you end the next day at 12. And the consultants there are quite good about making sure that you actually leave at 12. So you will get post-call at 12. You will not be there after 12. You will leave at 12. But gynae is, it's not difficult, you know? It's just a lot of work, but it's not difficult. And you get into the swing of things and you learn ways to make it more manageable for yourself. So for example, when you are on call on the weekends, your responsibility as an intern in the morning after the call is done is to go to postnates wards 3A and see all the post Caesars, all the post NVDs and discharge. That can sometimes be quite busy. But if you had a chilled call in the night, you could have gone during the night and seen those 3A patients, and you could have actually left early post call. So you figure out those things on the way, and they make it more manageable. And it's not a tough block. You get really good at IV lines. You get to do some Caesars. Yeah, it's a good rotation. It is very busy, but it's a good rotation. The next block I did was peds. Peds is going to be difficult wherever you go. It's just the procedures themselves are hard. But we had good seniors who are very hands-on. The consultants are quite strict, but I feel like across the board, pediatric consultants are quite strict. In terms of the calls, so it's like internal medicine in the sense that you start at 8 o'clock and you finish at 8 o'clock the next day, which is also quite reasonable. You don't get a pre-call though. In terms of responsibilities, so in nursery, you will see the low care patients and the KMC patients. You usually split it with another intern, and then someone will see the postnates, wards to see all the neonates that didn't really require nursery care. You see the patient, the consultant will do a ward round with you and help you out with the plan. And yeah, if you're struggling with IV lines, there's always someone to ask. In the pediatric ward, you are given the SAM unit and cubicle 7, which are like typically the more stable pediatric patients. And again, you see those patients by yourself, and the consultant comes and does a round with you. They can be quite strict and pedantic, but they do teach. And it's, it's peds. A lot of people don't like peds, so chances are most of you won't like it anyway. The next rotation was surgery. It's quite rough at Pixley because all the patients that there's a lot of trauma in Kwa-Mashu. There's just a lot of trauma. That's a lot of fighting, a lot of gunshots, a lot of stab wounds. So you'll see like a lot of trauma. And initially all that trauma used to go to King Edward, but now it's being seen all at Pixley. So it's quite busy. That surgical department is very, very busy. You will work very, very hard. And they're not the best at post call, unfortunately. They've been multiple times where interns have just left late post call, and like quite late post call. Like the latest I've left is 2:30, but I've been quite lucky. But some people have left like 3:30, 4 o'clock. It can be quite bad. So you guys just need to make a proper plan with your intern group to make a plan so that that post-call person can go home on time. And if you have a good group, it should work out quite well. In terms of your call, so you have a call, your call starts at 8 and it's supposed to end at 12 the next day. But, you need to make a plan for that to happen. In terms of the actual work, you see your patients on your own. And then your senior will come do like maybe a quick little review, and then you have your consultant ward round. There isn't a lot of focus on the ward round, and the consultant often will try and go through the round as quickly as possible. Because unlike internal medicine patients, it's not like a lot of nitty-gritty things like important clinical signs that can be missed. It's like usually they're either post-op or pre-op, or you're just managing like you're doing neuro-obs for a traumatic brain injury, or you're just monitoring an ICD for a patient that had a hemothorax. There's not usually a lot of things going on in the ward. It's just that patients that need to be seen. In terms of theater time, you don't actually get that much theater time. I mean, you will go and see emergencies, and then maybe if you're on call and one of the seniors allows you to go and do a case, maybe. But by and large, I didn't actually go to theater that much. You will get a lot of experience watching colonoscopies and endoscopies if you are keen. Our SOPD is not particularly busy either. But the admissions can pile up and it can be a lot. In terms of like surgical exposure, it's not the greatest. You will get exposure to a lot of procedures though. I know a lot of interns, especially in Pietermaritzburg, they say they haven't done a lot of CVPs, but in the surgical rotation, they will let you try for sure. You will do a lot of subclavian, well, not maybe a lot, but a fair amount of subclavian CVPs, and it will always be supervised, so you'll never feel like you're all on your own. Um, so you will enjoy that aspect. You'll get to do ICDs. It'll be in terms of that, it'll be good. The next rotation was family medicine for me. Family medicine is done at Mahatma Gandhi. I think it'll always be done at Mahatma Gandhi. It's a very busy hospital, but they've they've made it such that you can work there, you know. So MOPD closes at 4. All the clinics close at 4, so you will leave. If you're working in the clinics or room 1 or gateway clinic, you'll leave at 4 o'clock. The wards, they also, you'll leave at 4 o'clock at the end of the day, you know. Sometimes when you're doing your rotations, you notice that you'll have a lot of work piling up and then you'll end up leaving later than expected. I know for peds and surgery that happened to me. ONG not so much. Internal medicine never. You can actually leave home early in internal medicine. So in fam medicine, you get an allocated lunch break, which was for me a new thing because I just sometimes would not take a lunch break, which you should, guys. You should always take a lunch break. But in fam med, you get like an allocated lunch break, and the MOs are very chill. It's actually a very enjoyable rotation. Um, it's the exposure is a little bit different. You do get to manage quite independently. You get to do a lot of ICDs, not so many CVPs. You do get a little bit more time in theater to do Caesars. And you work in the clinics as well. So you do have like about 2 weeks in the Phoenix CHC, which is the community healthcare clinic there, which is an interesting experience. I didn't really enjoy it, but it's interesting. Um, you have 1 month of ONG, 1 week of PEDS, 1 week at MOPD, 1 month in casualty, 1 month in the emergency department at Pixley, which is actually a very nice month. You get to learn quite a bit because the emergency department is like a proper emergency department and they're very keen on teaching interns. Dr. Mbanga, who is the consultant that manages the interns during the ED rotation, she makes sure she has a list of topics that she makes sure you cover. She has a list of procedures that you must do. She makes like a whole little logbook thing that you have to sort out for your month of ED. And just in general, they're very keen to teach. They do ask a lot of questions, but they also teach a lot. So that was fam med. Currently, right now, I'm doing my psych rotation. I mean, I probably have seen some of you guys around actually. If you're here, say hi actually. I don't know. I remember a few names: Nakwanda, Bongani, Jaden, Tando, Avi. You guys are here. Hi. Anyway, psych is pretty chilled. I mean, psych is chilled everywhere. But we do all our calls at ED, which can be a bit rough. ED can be quite busy sometimes. Rest of my rotations I haven't done yet. Anesthetics, although it promises to be a good rotation. For anesthetics, I think in every department across the board, you get a pre-call and a post-call. Yeah, I mean, anesthetics, they do ask a lot of questions, but you get to practice a lot of intubation. You get to do all your spinals. The last rotation is orthos. I also haven't done this rotation, but just from what I've heard from other interns, it's also quite busy. Remember, there's so much trauma in KwaMashu, and some of that is obviously going to end up as broken bones, gunshot limbs, things like that. So it's also quite busy. Yeah, the interns they really work hard. It's a tough rotation, orthopedics. I think out of all the rotations, I think surgery and orthopedics are probably the toughest rotations. In terms of which blocks I enjoy the most, I think internal medicine and fam med, actually. They were solid rotations. Right. Anything else? Anything I missed?
Thank you so much for the overview, and just for like kind of specially speaking to each rotation. It's very insightful. I do just have a few questions. The first is, how many calls would you say you cover a month, and how many interns are there on each call?
So calls per month can differ between blocks. So in internal medicine, I think I had 6 per month. In peds, also 6 to 7 per month. ONG was, they kind of messed up our roster, but so some people ended up with a lot more calls than others. I kind of averaged in between. I think I had like 8 or maybe 7 per month. What other rotation? Peds was 6. Surgery was also 6 to 7. Fam med also 6 to 7. Psych also like 6 to 7 ED calls. Authors, I think, is a bit rough. I think you do 8 calls per month. Anesthetics also, in terms of calls, quite a bit, 8 calls per month. Yeah. And what was the other question? Sorry.
I can't remember, but I'm sure that we'll come back to it. When it comes to calls, who are you on call with? Do you have support?
Oh, yes. So there's MO support, but often, most times, you are the only intern on call. Remember, the Gandhi Pixley complex is actually quite a small group of interns. And we were actually smaller than most. So yeah, you will be the only intern on call. You will have an MO with you that you can always ask questions to. Sometimes in surgery they might be busy in theater, so you might have to run a resus by yourself. But internal med, ONG, peds, very good senior support. FAMID, also good senior support, but the difference is in FAMID, you expect it to be a little bit more independent. So they're not going to come and check on you. If you need something, you need to go and ask for it. And that's the only way you'll get senior advice. So you need to know when things are a bit out of your depth, and you need to go and ask. But there's always someone to ask. There's never been a case where I have had no one to ask. Psych, anesthetics, orthos, also good senior supervision, but you will always be the only intern on call. Except maybe in psych, the ED calls, sometimes you'll have someone with you.
Okay. And how would you say the work-life balance is? How are leaves? How do leaves work? How much leave do you get? Are you allocated leave, or do you pick your own? Like, how does that whole system work?
So I think the leave system is very similar everywhere. So in your first 2 rotations, so you do first year, and in first year you have 3-month rotations, remember? So for the first 3-month rotations, you get 5 days, which is a week, and you get the weekend prior and the weekend after off. So it's quite a significant amount of leave for those first 2 weeks. For those first 2 rotations, and then the second 2 rotations, you have actually 6 days off. So you have 5 days and then 1 extra day of another week. And you may not necessarily get like 2 weekends off. It depends on the slot you pick, because they give you allocated slots and you pick a slot. And then family medicine, you get your 2 weeks. You can do 2 consecutive weeks, but they don't encourage it. They prefer it if you do your first week and your second week separately. And I suppose it makes sense, because if you think about it, you get an extra weekend if you do your week slots separately. But I mean, they also leave that up to you. If you decide to do 2 weeks in a row, that's on you. And then for psych, orthos, anesthetics, you get 4 days. And you get the weekend prior off, or you get the weekend after the 4 days off, but you only get one of the weekends. And what did you say? Work-life balance.
Yes. So
Okay.
how's work-life balance? And I think
Work.
particularly also including kind of how your mental health is kind of affected by internship.
Um. Okay. Work-life balance. My work-life balance for surgery was not great. I mean, at the time, I thought it was fine, but then when I went to family medicine and I realized how much better my life was, I was like, ooh, that's not a good rotation. It was really not a good rotation. But honestly, for every other rotation, I think it's fine. It's manageable. You'll be fine. Obviously, work-life balance is not just always on your work situation. It's partially your responsibility as well. Um, if you feel, I mean, you have to take that in your own knowledge. You have to make sure that you have that proper work-life balance. But it's definitely possible. It's not, you can make it happen for yourself. Except maybe surgery. Surgery is rough. And all those is also rough. But I think surgery across the board is always rough.
Yeah.
And then in terms of mental health, again, I feel like this is more personality based. But
Mhm.
you know what? I haven't heard of a lot of cases of people really, really struggling. Except I think one person really struggled in the surgical rotation and had to have like some kind of psychiatric intervention and things like that. But by and large, I think you will be fine. Remember, you're not alone in internship. You have a whole group of interns with you who are experiencing the exact same thing. So make friends with them, guys. Hang out with them. Converse, have some
Mhm.
camaraderie, work together. You
Yeah.
know, when your friend is struggling, go and help them. And I know you're also going to feel overwhelmed at some point, and they're going to help you, but you have to build that relationship. And you'll find that as you build those relationships, mental health is like easy peasy, because
Yeah.
you've got friends, you've got a support group. It may not be necessarily like family and things like that, but interns themselves can be your support group because they're there with you every day. They know what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah. Is it safe to stay near Pixley? Would not recommend.
Oh, okay. So we still are going to go into the questions that are in the chat because we probably are still going to accumulate a few more. So now moving on from like kind of the work environment to I guess the living environment. Can you give us a bit of information about the DQ? How close is it? How much does it cost? Is it fully furnished?
DQ, I unfortunately don't have a lot of information about.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's not fully furnished. I don't know if you guys have had the Addington group speak to you yet, but our DQs are their DQs because we are part of their complex. So every morning they have to travel from Addington DQ to Pixley Hospital, which is a bit of a journey. But they do provide hospital transport. So if you don't have a car, at least there's that. But remember, if you have an early day and you want to go home early, then you have to wait for that hospital transport, which is a bit unfortunate. Um, and also, if you have like a lot of stuff on your plate and you're running late, that can also be a bit of a problem. And Pixley is a bit of a dangerous place. Getting an Uber can be a little bit difficult because Ubers, they're not so comfortable coming to Pixley because there's like a bit of a taxi thingamajig going on that I don't really understand. But Ghandi, you should be fine. You should be able to get an Uber easily from Ghandi to and from Addington DQ. So yeah.
Okay. And I mean you touched on it on a bit, but would you say that having a car is necessary, especially when it comes to kind of going in between Gandhi and Pixley and the other clinics and hospitals that you're
I,
expected?
I wouldn't say it's necessary, hey? I wouldn't. It's just something that's nice to have. It does make your life more convenient, but you don't necessarily need it.
Mhm. And in terms of the area, You have already kind of touched on the fact that it's not safe to live near the hospital. Which areas are closer around that you would suggest living in that are still close enough? And what are the recreational? What's the area like in terms of recreation, malls, that kind of thing, James?
Guys, it's Devon. You live here. All the recreation is the same. But places to live that would be nice is Durban North, Phoenix, Mount Edgecombe, that kind of area. It's close to work. Those would be like the easy areas in terms of traveling.
Mm-hmm.
Recreational activities outside on the hospital, there are no recreational activities, but I mean, there's the usual Durban things. If you live at Addington DQ, beach is a recreational activity. So
Okay. Okay, and moving kind of on to everyone's burning question, salary. How much is it? Do you get any extra allowances?
no extra allowances.
Mm-hmm.
It's a metropolitan area. It's not a rural area. You will not get rural allowance.
Okay. Do
Yeah,
you receive like a risk allowance? Because
no, you do
okay.
not receive risk allowance.
And how much is the salary after tax?
I think it's like 45,000, but then I also pay for government pension. So
Okay. Okay. And so there were a few questions that we received. This is actually kind of a mixture of students across the provinces. So it's not just KZN or UKZN. I, for example, am studying in Cape Town. So that's why we're kind of asking area questions.
oh, I see.
Yes. So I just wanted to ask, when it comes to language, knowing that KZN is predominantly Zulu speaking, for somebody who speaks no Zulu at all, do you think that they would survive?
Yes, you'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
In Ghandi, remember, there's not just the Zulu population, there's also a lot of Indian population.
Mm-hmm.
There definitely is some Indian jargon that you'll have to catch on to, but remember, they speak English, and if you ask them what that means, they'll just tell you.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Zulu is definitely predominantly there, but you'll pick up words and you'll learn, you'll manage.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And when it comes to, I mean, you touched on it a little bit, but would you say that you get enough clinical exposure and enough chances to do procedures that would make you feel as though you're competent for ComServe, or is it more of pushing paper?
So you do get clinical exposure, definitely, and you do get to do your procedures. But if you are someone who really, really, really loves surgery and you really, really, really want to be in theater, you may not get as much exposure as you'd like. But you definitely will be prepared for ComServe. It's just those nitty-gritty things of like, if you really love, like, actually, I think surgery is the only one where you probably wouldn't get it. I think in orthos, if you really make it effort to like be at theater and try and learn stuff, I think you actually will get a lot of opportunities. I think surgery is the only one where it's the only discipline where if you're really, really into surgery, you might not, get as much opportunities as you'd like. But you definitely would get all your clinical and procedural skills and you'd be ready for ComServe.
Okay. And I mean, in other hospitals, they were talking about how there's possibilities of failing blocks and there are assessments. Can you just touch on that? If there are assessments, what kind of assessments, and how do you kind of get graded to see if you fail or not?
Okay, so internal medicine, very chilled. I don't think there's anyone that I don't know of anyone that had to repeat. I think the major things that would cause you to repeat internal medicine is if you took some extended sick leave. It's just part of the HPCSA's policy. If you take a lot of sick leave, you have to recompensate some of that time, especially if you had like some of the interns that repeated with us, they had like long COVID and they were out for like a whole month. So obviously they had to repeat that month. You can't go out of internship without completing your 3 months. And I think the only other reason that for internal medicine where they would keep you is like if you were a really, really bad intern. And by that I mean you didn't listen when you were asked to do things, you were not efficient, and things like that. But by and large, quite chilled. In terms of ONG, also I haven't seen a lot of people repeat ONG. Again, you have to be like significantly bad. You have to be like lazy. Basically, if you are lazy, they will make you repeat. Peds are a little bit more pedantic. Um, to be honest, I'm not even sure why people repeated peds. I don't know why, to be honest. Surgery. The head of department is Mr. Carter. Um, he's very nice. But I think if you take too much sick leave, I think he also will make you repeat.
Mhm.
Um, FAMED, um, Dr. Ali is the consultant there, and he takes feedback from the MOs in terms of who he thinks should be repeating. But the MOs are very kind. But just remember, even though it's busy and it seems overwhelming, you must still work, guys. I know it
Mhm.
can be overwhelming, especially in that casualty at night when you're on call. It can be overwhelming. And you kind of feel like, oh my gosh, what must I do now? But remember, it doesn't all fall to you. There is a senior MO in charge. And if you work, people will see you working and they will find no problems with you. Psych, honestly, never seen anyone repeat psych. Anesthetics, you do have an end of block exam. Orthopedics is also quite chilled. Yeah.
Okay. And then if you could just please comment on the competitiveness of getting placement. So what number on your list was the Gandhi Pixley complex? Was it on your list? And with just people that you know, how many of them, or like where was it on their list and did they get it?
So, um, the Ghandi Pixley complex is not on the internship thing. It actually falls a part of the Addington complex. And all our link forms actually they go to the Addington complex. All our admin and stuff is done at Addington. So there's no Ghandi Pixley complex as such on the intern thing. Um Actually, in terms of placements there, I think a fair number of my friends didn't even have Addington on their list at all.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, most of the people I've met, Addington was not on their list. Or alternatively, they got placed elsewhere and they actually swapped in because they preferred to be in the metropolitan area. And
Mm-hmm.
as for me, it was not on my list. I didn't have anything on my list that was in Durban. I did have some KZN options, but I didn't have anything that was in Durban. And I got placed here. And then when I got placed in Addington, I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to Addington. And then I pitch up and they're like, oh, no, wait, actually, you're going to Gandhi. And then I realized I'm doing my first rotation at internal medicine, which is done at Pixley. And they're like, no, actually, you're going to Pixley. So it was a bit of a wild roller coaster
Mm-hmm.
getting there.
Yeah. And we did receive a few questions just about the fact that because it's a new rotation, how structured and organized would you say that it is? And is there any way of knowing whether you're going to be predominantly at Gandhi, predominantly at Pixley, or Addington? Now that they've had a bit more time with the rotation.
So obviously the Gandhi Pixley group is actually smaller than the Addington complex group. So less of you will end up in the Gandhi Pixley rotation. And as I've mentioned, there are certain blocks that you will do at Gandhi. FAMED for definite, gonna be at Gandhi. ONG and PEDS, I can't comment on that. They are currently at Gandhi, but at some point they will be moving across to Pixley. I'm just
Mhm.
not sure when. But be prepared to do ONG and PEDS at Gandhi. Internal medicine, surgery, anesthetics, psych, orthopedics, all of those will definitely be done at Pixley, and there's no chance of it ever going to Ghandi. Ghandi doesn't have a surgical department. The internal medicine department completely moved itself from Ghandi and transplanted itself at Pixley. There was never a psych, ortho, anesthetic really rotation in Gandhi Hospital ever. They used to be done at Addington. They now be done at Pixley. So there's only technically 3 rotations done at Gandhi now. That's ONG, Peds, and FAMED. And 2 of those may not even be done at Gandhi anymore.
Okay. And is there any way of knowing, currently at least, or moving forward, whether you're going to end up at Addington or Gandhi if you put Addington down? I mean, or Pixley.
So some people requested Gandhi. So when they got placed at Addington, they asked to be placed at Gandhi. And some of us just got, told we're going to Gandhi. But it's flexible in terms of they will let you swap with someone. If you really want to be at Addington, you can go ahead and try and swap. If you really want to be at Gandhi, you can also go ahead and try and swap. They're lenient in terms of that. They also do take requests. Obviously, if there are a lot of people requesting, not everyone might get to be wherever they want to be, but they do give you the option to request. I know one of my friends did request specifically to be at Gandhi, and she got placed at Gandhi.
Okay. And so the next question that we received is, would you say that whether it's from patients or from seniors, you've experienced any racism or witnessed anyone experiencing any racism?
No, I don't think I've seen any racism.
Mm-hmm.
No, sorry.
Okay. And for somebody who wants to be doing primaries or kind of doing diplomas and those kinds of things, would you say that there's time to study during the first and second year rotations?
You can't do primaries as an intern, and a lot of the diplomas will not actually they won't let you do them unless you're like in ComServe or anything.
Yeah.
In surgery, they do encourage you to do your BLS, ATLS, ACLS kind of things. And yeah, you can do some basic courses, some basic suturing courses. I know in FAMED, at the beginning of a rotation, Dr. Ali will specifically ask you, does anyone have anything that they're planning to do during this rotation? Any BLS, ATLS courses? Because you must let him know early that you're going to take leave for that. They do give special leave. I think it's either 1 or 2 days. I'm not exactly certain about that, but they do give special leave.
Okay. And lastly, from my side, before we open for questions, what would you rate the Gandhi Pixley complex and why?
Ooh, I'd rate it like a 7.
Mm-hmm.
It's good. It's a very good complex to be at. You'll learn a lot. You'll do everything you need to. But for me, especially in FAMED, I didn't enjoy the patients. Because Gandhi is such a busy hospital. I mean, if you live in Durban, you know, almost every week Gandhi is in the newspaper about something that's going on. The patients tend to be like, they tend to argue a lot and they tend to get annoyed. And it's not unreasonable that they're annoyed, because remember, those queues are very long. They're waiting for long standards of time, and casualty, they're waiting for long periods of time. But the thing is, when you're on call during the night and the 5th person has come up to you and complained to you about why they're not getting seen, and they can be quite aggressive about it and quite rude, actually. It's not the nicest thing. And remember, you're working there, you're also tired, you work the whole day, and you're working during the night again. It's not the greatest, but you do learn how to manage things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's a positive. Um, but I didn't really enjoy that aspect. Also, I didn't really enjoy the surgical rotation, which is why I took away a point. Um, just that post-call life. No, that's not okay, because I know a lot of I know in Peter Maritzburg, post call is at 10 and you leave at 10. So I find it a bit ridiculous that they expected us to complete so much of ward work. Um, you work from 8 in the morning and then you finish at like later than 12. That to me was just not great. I mean, sure, you can make a plan with your other interns, but we were a small group. There were 7 of us, and it's really difficult to find someone to hand over who's available to finish all your work. And sometimes it can be quite a bit. I know I handed over some things to one of my friend one time, and she ended up leaving at 7 p.m. that night, just because of the sheer amount of stuff that she had to do. Um, and the MOs are very like, they'll do their MO thing, but they will never like assist with any of the stuff that you need to do. They will never like, pitch in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they're very much in their own zone, and you're in your own zone, and you're kind of like, this is your stuff you need to do, and you are responsible for it. And yeah, so I didn't really enjoy that. So those are the reasons I would subtract points, but every other rotation, it's been really good. I really enjoyed my time here. It's been an experience.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's good to hear. So now to go to the questions that are in the chat. So the first question is, if you could just reiterate which clinics form part of the FAM-med rotation.
Pardon?
Which clinics form part of the FAM-med rotation?
There's just one clinic,
Mm-hmm.
Phoenix City. You'll spend your entire 6 months. I know some of the institutions, they have an aspect where you go into some kind of rural district hospital. I know in Peter Maritzburg they have that. Um, Ghandi is the district hospital. You're already at it.
Mm-hmm.
So you won't travel like further out. You'll just be in Phoenix working in Ghandi, or you'll be at Phoenix CHC and you'll be there for only 2 weeks. And then you'll go back to Pixley for your 1 month of being in an emergency department. But you don't really go anywhere else. You don't have to, like, I know some people in PNB, they went to like Apple's Bar, so they had to like move themselves and stay at a new place for a little bit while they did their little, rural district rotation. For us, that's not a thing. It's just Gandhi, Phoenix CHC, which is like 5 minutes away from Gandhi, and Pixley. Those are the only hospitals you ever go to, and they're very close to each other.
Okay. And the next question is, would you say that Gandhi Pixley Complex allowed you to improve in terms of clinical and procedural skills?
Yes, I think we covered that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think another one that we haven't covered is how helpful are the nurses and how resourced is the hospital?
The hospital is well resourced at Pixley, very well resourced. Um, In the emergency department, they have ultrasound machines that you can do e-fasts on. So you'll get to learn how to do those from your seniors. Their resus is well equipped. Pixley, very well equipped. It's a good hospital. Gandhi, not so much. It's a district hospital, you guys. It's a little bit different. Um, but yeah, they have everything they need. And I mean, if you have a complaint, you go to the consultant or you go to your MO and you say, actually, we don't have any CVP sets. Can you make a plan for us? And they will make a plan for you. In terms of how helpful the nurses are, well, I think at Gandhi, because it's a district hospital, they're actually much more helpful. The nurses in the wards will assist with IV lines for your FAMED rotation. They assist with bloods. I know one morning I was like doing my ward work and the nurse came up to me and was like, oh, do you need help with your bloods? And I was like, what? No one's ever asked me if I needed help with bloods before. But yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So During my family rotation, the nurses there are like top tier. They're very good. Every other rotation, they're nurses, guys. They're gonna ask you to do a gazillion IV lines. They are. Sometimes they just are gazillion IV lines. In orthopedics, I know there are ortho trained nurses who do not do pops, which is quite a pity. Apparently, they'll just help you, but they won't do it. But you know what? It is what it is. At Pixley, I think the nurses they expect a bit more from interns. In Ghandi, peds, obviously the nurses, they can't really assist you as much. They can't do those IV lines. They're really difficult. They're kids. It's difficult to expect the nurses to assist you with things like that, but they are pleasant. ONG, um ONG, the nurses are good. They're very hands-on. But remember, it's all about the relationship you build with the nurses. If it's something you prioritize, you make them feel like you appreciate them and you appreciate everything they do, they'll try and make your life pleasant. Obviously, you're going to get that one sour grape every once in a while, but that's just life, and you learn to deal with it, and you'll be fine.
Okay, thank you. The rest of the questions I think we've covered, but there is one that says, how is the academic aspect? So ward rounds, etc. Also, are there students that rotate with us?
There are students. I think there's students in internal medicine, psychiatry, ONG, peds. Um, yeah, those are the only rotations we have students for. So for internal medicine, you have the journal meetings every Friday, you have intern presentations, but those are HPCSA required, so I don't know if you consider that. But the consultants themselves quite keen to teach. I know one of the consultants, Dr. Naika, she's always keen to teach. If you ever end up in her team, you will learn a lot. Um, the MOs, I mean, they try their best to teach, but obviously it's a little bit different learning from a consultant as opposed to an MO. The MO is something that's someone who's just worked in the department, whereas a consultant, this is their jam. This is what they do for a living. This is their thing. And there are regs as well who will also teach you quite a bit. For surgery, every morning you have a morning meeting. You do get a bit grilled, but they also teach quite a bit, and it's quite helpful because they teach you things that are quite relevant. So you will learn quite a bit. In ONG, not gonna lie, the teaching wasn't the greatest. It wasn't. I mean, we had a couple of that HPCSA required, like morning meetings where they did all the important topics about gynae and obstetric emergencies. But other than that, not so much. You will get to do your Caesars though. I didn't get to do all 10. I think a lot of people didn't get to do all 10. I think the max stand was 7. But you'll learn, and you'll learn how to manage patients. But there's no like specific structured academic program for ONG. Peds, at the beginning of the rotation, you will have meetings, just orientating you, making sure that everyone has the basics down. They were quite helpful, but beyond that, also not a hell of a lot of academic teaching done. Some of the MOs are quite keen to teach, and they will do that. But I think for peds, the main thing is they just want you to get the basics right, and they want you to be able to do procedures. So if you can do that, honestly, you'll be fine. Um, I mean, if you really love peds, I'm sure if you push for it, they will definitely teach you. Um, Med, the academic program is probably the worst. You do have intern presentations, but how much you learn and how much of time you take to do procedures and things like that, that is basically on you. Um, there's obviously guidance when you're managing patients, but there's not a whole lot of effort put into academics. In psychiatry, I mean, psychiatry is a troll block, you guys. I don't know what to say about the academic program, to be honest. I mean, I have a presentation tomorrow, but they're also quite chill during the presentations, and psych's just not one of those books.
Yeah.
Anesthetics, they do ask a lot of questions. They do teach quite a bit. Yeah, but they don't get upset if you don't know the answer. It's quite chilled. Um, Orthopedics, you have your morning meetings again where basically the majority of your academics are done. And yeah.
Okay. Thank you. We have a question that's asking about if they offer any like salary package options.
I think it's the usual. Do you want a birthday bonus or not? Or do you want all your stuff, all your salaries split up equally? And then if you want government pension or not. But I think it's the same across the board.
Okay. And then I do think that the last question was covered. The question of just saying what the rotations look like, I think specifically for FAMMed, but I do think that you've covered that. But there is a question that do you get to cover up on the C sections?
Okay,
For
so
FAMMed.
I did 5 during my ONG rotation, and then the extra 2 I did were actually during my FAMMed rotation.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, not you can, but you still remember it also depends on how much you did during ONG.
Mhm.
So maybe you might. I know some people.
Can anyone just like still hear me? Oh, okay. There we go.
Okay, I'm back.
Sorry, yes.
Yeah, but remember, some of those MOs are a little bit junior, and it's a bit stressful for them to now be responsible for you doing the C-section. So yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if you're gonna cover them, to be honest. I don't think you will. Sorry.
Thank you so much, Dr. Montgomery. You've given us a lot of insight, and we'll be able to now kind of make a much more educated decision. I do just want to ask, is there anyone who has any final remarks, any final questions? You can just put up your hand at this point. Going once, going twice. I do have a hand from Dango.
Hey, Doc, thank you so much for the presentation. You mentioned that there isn't a lot of teaching and support, like academic support for obs and gynae, but do you get to do a range of procedures, particularly gynecological procedures like colposcopies and things like that?
Honestly, gynae exposure at Ghandi is the absolute worst. You will not get good gynae exposure. Genuinely, you will not. Yeah, in terms of colposcopies, I think I got to observe a couple. MVAs, I got to observe a couple. They will sign for you, but you won't really be doing a lot of gynae procedures. You won't be seeing a lot of gynae patients either. The focus on ONG is mostly on the obstetrics part, to be honest. Yeah.
Thank you. And at Addington, do you know if there's a bit more exposure at Addington?
I'm not actually so sure. I think you should rather ask maybe the Addington people. I think it's a little bit more than us, to be honest. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Montgomery. We have one more hand from Georgia.
Hi, I'm so sorry. I was having a bit of issues with my signal, and I know you did touch on it, but I just couldn't really follow. I'm just trying to understand. So, for us, if we wanted to work at Dr. Pixley / Gandhi, sorry, I'm from KZN, but studying in Stellenbosch, so I don't really know the hospitals. But do we apply to Addington, but then of the people that are going to Addington, some then get placed there? Am I understanding that correctly, or have I missed everything?
No, that's it. You apply for Addington, and then afterwards, if you get Addington, you can try and request for Ghandi Pixley rotation if you desire.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Dr. Montgomery, for this the time that you've given us. On the questions that specifically that Dr. Montgomery couldn't answer because they're related to Addington, the Addington video is the recording of the Addington session is on our YouTube channel, and so you can just watch it there. I think the DQ is also covered there, and there is I think that there's like a video of what the DQs look like. But the questions that are specifically for Addington or can only be answered by Addington is up on our YouTube page. So thank you so much for everyone who attended. And again, Dr. Montgomery, we thank you so much for your time and for your insight.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, and we'll see you in our next session. Bye.